I published a video on making pregnancy and parenthood more deliberate actions and framed it in relation to pro-life and pro-choice. One of my contributors asked some very interesting questions. Question 1. I think society frowns upon male partners deciding to not take part in raising their offspring. Do you think men have some type of moral obligation to raise their offspring, even if they did not want to become a parent and only wanted to engage in sexual activity for pleasure? The simple answer to this question would be to teach people how to enjoy sexual pleasure without risking pregnancy. From the standpoint of ensuring deliberate parenthood, when engaging in sexual activity for pleasure only, the moral obligation is to prevent pregnancy. How people choose to do that should be up to them. In my opinion, if a man does not want to be responsible for kids and wants to engage in sexual activity for pleasure only, then he should make an appointment with a urologist and proceed with a vasectomy. That would have been the option I chose in such a situation, and when my wife wanted no more children, I exercised that option because we wanted no more kids. There are many other options to preventing pregnancy, and those options should be well understood and utilized. Some other principles to consider are: everyone should consider sexual activity a privilege, not a right. The risk of pregnancy should be discussed before sexual activity occurs. If it is not the desired outcome of sexual activity, then action should be taken to deliberately reduce that risk. Parenthood should not be a punishment. That applies to everyone. Our society should have a general interest in and responsibility for ensuring the welfare of our children. Because we all benefit from the contributions of one another, we should all be invested in the health and well-being of one another. If we as a society cannot effectively teach our people to be deliberate about pregnancy and parenthood, then we as a society should support the children those people unwittingly produce. Until we learn to teach people how to be deliberate about pregnancy and parenthood, a stronger society will ensure the raising of children with the appropriate care in all circumstances, so that future generations contain more adults capable of doing exactly that. Question number 2. Depression and anxiety can also happen to men as a result of an abortion, particularly an abortion that they did not want to occur. Do you think that there is a solution that could satisfy both parties in this case? The case being, if a woman is emotionally invested in the idea of not having a child, while a man is emotionally invested in the idea of having a child. The simple answer to this question would be to discuss expectations of possible outcomes of the relationship before engaging in a sexual relationship in the first place. If the woman is not invested in the idea of having a child, while a man is invested in the idea of having a child, that should be discussed before sexual activity occurs. The purpose for sexual activity should be agreed upon by all parties involved in the activity. In the cases where that hasn't happened, because a woman has autonomy of her body, she then has the right to decide what to do with her body. There is not a single instance that I can think of where a woman's bodily autonomy should be forfeited. Men should recognize and accept women's bodily autonomy, just as women should accept men's bodily autonomy as well. If women don't want kids, then men shouldn't thrust kids upon them. If men don't want kids, then women shouldn't thrust kids upon them. Men do not have a right to demand offspring of anyone. Women do not have a right to demand offspring of anyone either. Going to the specific example in the question, if a man desires children, then he should court women who share his vision for children. If a woman does not desire children, then she should not engage in sexual activity with men who do. In the case of all abortions, people should understand the psychological effects of abortions. Having an abortion affects people. Having children affects people. The pursuit of sexual pleasure only should be done maturely and deliberately so as to reduce pregnancy, and thus reducing the possibility of abortions. When a woman chooses an abortion, society should offer mental health support to both women and men.